Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your breakfast this morning. And for those of you who are still trickling in, please enjoy. You can listen as you're grabbing breakfast and then come into the auditorium to hear our first session of the day. Thank you to Kraft Heinz and Hana Maruki for sponsoring the breakfast this morning. And I hope you also had a chance to try Genevieve Melly's baking goods. She's our CIA faculty spotlight. And she was at the reception yesterday, and her new cookbook is Baking for Impact. So yesterday, we heard stories of successes and challenges from presenters who acted with compassion, making decisions with the long term in mind, thinking of what you can do, small and large, to impact the well-being of people and planet. And our topics yesterday covered levers of change that happen before and on the menu. And today we continue this journey as we delve into topics of food cultures and trends, chefs as vital gastronomists, protein literacy, and consumer trends. We will also hear about leaders who are empowering and training their workforce and who are making innovative business decisions to offer healthy, sustainable menus at a value price point. We'll finish our day with some innovative food waste solutions and, of course, our Repurpose Solutions awards competition. I want to acknowledge that we've been getting really great questions through our Slido app and through the website. And keep the questions coming. This morning, we are going to be listening in on a few discussions. And after the morning break, we will resume taking Slido questions, and we'll continue to try to do our best to get a few of them in there. It's great to see your questions coming in. So I am hoping that we can check in on our, let's see this slide, next slide, please. For those of you who haven't yet completed next slide, please. Thank you. If you have not yet planted a commitment in our commitment forest this year, take a moment and just splash the screen here. If we can go back, please. And the idea here is that we want to check in again in a little bit to see our forest growing. And I think as of last night, I saw around 25 commitments. I would love to see by the end of the summit if we can get close to 100. It's pretty easy. You can easily quantify something in there. It's set up for you. You can also select other and just tell us what you're planning to do. So thank you for that. A reminder that you can check in on our summit through the conference app, as well as summit resources on the website. And I am thrilled to announce that as of today, you have access to hot off the press 2025 Plant Forward Opportunity Report. You can find this through the conference app as well as on our Menus of Change website. And we will be diving into this report a little later today in our Consumer Insights session as well as in the breakout session 3. This year's report reveals how flavor, price, and protein can win over the most skeptical diners. Nearly 1 in 4 Americans are cutting back on meat and are open to mixed protein dishes. And so you can read more about how to unlock actionable insights on everyone's favorite topic, which is protein. It's now time for me to introduce the next session. And I'd like to welcome to the stage Jen Clarke, Senior Director of the CIA School of Graduate Studies. Jen has a distinguished background in the nonprofit and higher education sectors, and over the last 25 years, she began her career also in the Environment and Human Resources Development departments in the Canadian federal government. Please join me in welcoming Jen Clarke to the stage.
Thank you very much, Abby. I don't have to introduce myself. Thank you. So I joined the CIA less than a year ago, so this is actually my first Menus of Change. So I'm very excited to be here with you today. We're also joined by students from our Masters in Sustainable Food Systems program and our Masters in Food Business. It's also their first MOC too. In addition to these 2 stellar offerings from the School of Graduate Studies, the school also offers a master's degree in wine and beverage management and a master's in culinary arts. And in September, we'll be welcoming our very first cohort in the brand new Culinary Therapeutics program. This new program approaches evidence-based nutrition through a chef's lens, leading to better health and wellness for everyone. And we're still accepting applications for all of our programs starting in September. They're offered online and asynchronous, in an asynchronous environment with 3 short in-person programs, or residencies, which is including the one that we're holding this week, and which is why our students are on campus. I'm very happy to introduce the next panel to you, moderated by our very own Mary Purdy, who wears many hats, including a very cute one she's been sporting this week. She's an integrative eco-dietitian, managing director of the Nutrient Dense Alliance, a podcaster, many other things, including, of course, one of our adjunct faculty members in the Sustainable Food Systems program. Joining Mary today are 2 of our outstanding alumni. Christine Migton, who graduated in 2020 from our very first food business cohort. Christine is what I like to call a triple threat. She has an associate's, bachelor's, and a master's degree, all from the Culinary Institute. We're also joined by J.B. Douglas, who graduated from our very first Sustainable Food Systems program in 2024. He's parlayed his artistic background and passion for wild and foraged foods into creating vibrant visuals and storytelling to share with the world the food system he wants to see. As you'll hear, our students find us for different reasons, but they're all motivated to make a difference in the future of food. I'm inspired by their stories and how they've been able to take their own diverse backgrounds, leverage what they've learned in our programs, and gone on to make that difference. They give me hope for our future. Mary?
Hello, hello. Ooh, we got some entry music as well. That's kind of fun. Hello, outstanding alums, JB and Christine.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's it going?
And good morning to all of you. We are here to learn a little bit more about why you chose to join the graduate programs online, and especially the first cohort. So tell us a little bit about what brought you here.
Sure. So CIA has always held such a special place in my heart. As Jen just noted, I have an associate's and bachelor's degree from here. And CIA's marketing works. I saw a targeted ad on Facebook for this program, and it just sparked something in me. At the time, I was the executive chef of a very small boutique French restaurant in my native New Jersey. And as anyone with a understanding of French cuisine knows, it can be pretty rigid. So joining this program really gave me the opportunity to explore other ways of thinking and meet people who also wanted to move their careers forward in ways that maybe a lot of us didn't understand at the time of starting.
Excellent. How about you, JB?
Yeah, as Jen mentioned, my background is actually in theater and the arts. I knew nothing about food or sustainability growing up. I grew up on just granola bars and like Costco dinners. But I was doing a show, strangely, on Isabella Rossellini's farm, and I saw what a small farm can do for a community, and I felt very encouraged and inspired to delve into that and feed the creative side of my brain with food. And so that just started this like long journey of becoming more and more obsessed with like, what does good food look like? What does local food look like? Turns out oftentimes it's wild. And just like Christine, I was on the hunt for a master's program, and I got a targeted ad. It had to be like the day that it came out. And as a digital marketer, love a targeted ad that actually works. And I said, I will click that, thank you very much. And I applied right away, and it just felt like the perfect fit. I loved that it was looking at really a zoomed out view of the food system, and that it wasn't like stuck within one piece of sustainability or one piece of food.
I love that idea of feeding the creative side of your brain with food. Love that. How about a highlight of the program? What's something that really stood out to you as being a really, either a changeable moment or something that really benefited you as a student and as a professional?
Oh, there are so many. just meeting some incredible people who I'm still in touch with today and being able to immerse myself in an environment that not only promoted asking questions, but promoted feedback as well. In my role at the time, I was essentially living and dying by open table reviews. And as any chef knows, that can sometimes not be a safe space, but in this environment, getting feedback from my peers, from my instructors, really kind of made me push the way that I was thinking. It wasn't just, okay, we arrived at an answer, but why did we arrive at that answer? And I'm sorry, of course, one of the highlights has to be dinner at Single Thread, one of the best restaurants in California, or if not the US. So definitely a major highlight there.
Amazing. JB?
Yeah, I mean, because I graduated just a year ago, there's already a lot that's still in my head, so it'll be hard to whittle it down. But I think I came into the program with a really narrow focus. I was like, I want to understand how foragers and wild food can be a part of making a more sustainable and equitable food system. So I was really stuck on that. And this program kept exposing me to all different pieces of things that I hadn't considered. That systems thinking of understanding, oh, if this lever is changing over here, then maybe this happens over here. So some of the biggest highlights were things that I didn't expect to be interested in, actually one being your course on sustainable diets and public health, because it really opened my eyes into how we think about nutrition, how we assess it, how we research it, and it led me to noticing where there was gaps in information around wild and foraged foods and their nutritional value, and that actually ended up playing into my capstone at the end of it.
Yeah, which was fantastic. If you have a chance to check out JB's capstone, it was really fascinating. And I think that's something I really see in the students too, both now and in the past couple of years, is this idea of supporting one another, asking questions. There's a reflective forum opportunity in a lot of the courses that we teach, where the students get to create a post, say something, and then the other students are following up on that post and asking questions. And I have seen the most brilliant questions being asked of the fellow students, and also challenging students too, to say, hey, wait a second, have you thought about it from this perspective? So there's challenging, there's curiosity, and there's that continual why. Yeah.
Yeah, on that, there was something very thrilling about getting into a cohort with people that had all been in their own little worlds, being like, how do I change things? How do I change things? And having all that energy in the same place, like thinking of those big, far out solutions all together, and how does it actually operationally happen? How does it logistically happening? Was very satisfying, because oftentimes that systems thinking is happening in our own little worlds until we're connected in with like-minded folks.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. When I first started the program, a good friend of mine said to me, a bachelor's level education teaches you what to think, but a master's level education teaches you how to think. And I think that we both have a very similar experience in, challenging not only what we're thinking, but the way that we were thinking.
Yeah. And on that note, we often enter into an educational program with an expectation of learning a certain thing or having a specific experience. What was something about the program that maybe surprised you or led you down a different pathway than you thought you were originally going?
Oh, I feel like I have the distinction of graduating in 2020, virtually. As we can all imagine, the world was a very different place from when we started in 2018. So the project that I'd worked on for my capstone ended up fizzling due to the restraints of things like social distancing. But my big picture way of thinking was we were still able to apply resources to another project. So that was really surprising to me, was being able to take the things that I had learned and still apply them to other ways of either thinking or other projects that I would later develop.
Yeah. Congrats on making it through 2020.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I have a pretty specific example. I really thought that a lot of the solutions that I'd be chasing would be in the land of like policy and advocacy, especially as it relates to like the legality of wild mushroom harvest, or labor as it relates to foraging cultures. And one of the later programs where we were really looking at policy change and advocacy and what that messaging looks like, really revealed that maybe that was not the right spot to start in, or the right place. I don't think that there's enough cultural basis to make that work happen yet, and so I had to really rethink like some of those long-term visions around what comes first in getting the world to eat more wild foods.
Nice. You are both gainfully employed, so there is a future if you're a student out there or thinking about this. Tell us a little bit about the pathway that brought you to where you are working now.
Like anything else, it's a pretty convoluted journey, but one that had a lot of surprises along the way. My capstone project for this program had been a cafe that employs adults with disabilities. My mom and I had started a nonprofit organization after my dad passed. I do have a sibling with autism. And we had this massive idea of creating a space where people who are underemployed would find valuable skills and meaningful work. And of course, COVID happened and that didn't work. So we dissolved our resources into a similar cafe that was already up and operational. And it was through a connection there that I found my way to one position, and that position led to my career with US Foods. I've been with the company for 6 months, almost to the day, and I'm a fresh specialist, so I get to go into our accounts and talk to our operators about their problems and how we can offer solutions, either in product placement or some of the technology we offer. And solving problems is essentially the crux of the CIA Master's Program. So I'm using the skills and abilities that I gained through this program in just a very different way.
Solving problems. That's what we need more of, so thank you.
Yeah, one thing that I realized during the program was just how much I still had to learn about alternative economic models around different like unusual business models that could fuel innovation. And so during one of the courses, Taylor Reed's course, we had to interview somebody in our community, and I interviewed a composter, and he connected me to Anthony Mint, and I learned about Zero Foodprint because of that interview. And a few months later, Zero Foodprint had an opening in a marketing and comms role that just made a lot of sense to me. And suddenly I could see this through line with what I needed to learn more about was at this company. And the things that I do well, which is around storytelling, color, painting the picture of what a better food for future looks like, is just as applicable in these models and these spaces as they are in the wild food space. And so I'm very happy to have gotten that role at Zero Foodprint, and so much of what I learned about the systemic benefits of regenerative agriculture have then, in the school, have played into that role that I'm in now. So that's what I do during the day.
Amazing. I have a similar story too. There was a student who had written an assignment in a course that I teach, the Sustainable Diets and Public Health. The assignment was to write up about and evaluate a brand that has a sustainability initiative. So she wrote just a fabulous article, you could say blog post almost, about a granola company called 7 Sundays. I happened to have a connection with 7 Sundays, and I read this blog post and I said, you know what? This needs to be seen by more than just me. This is an amazing little piece of work. So I wrote to 7 Sundays and I said, I just want to share with you this blog post of this student because they're featuring you, they're evaluating you. There's some good stuff. There's a couple of critique in there as well. So I sent it to them, and she said, this is great, we love it. We're looking for an intern this summer. Would this person be interested? I was like, oh my God. So I put the two in touch. I'm not sure how it has panned out, but those kinds of relationships can be built within these programs, sometimes just by happenstance. And yeah, go ahead.
Can I say, something that was one of the most valuable things about it was just the volume of people that I was introduced to, whether just through like guest lectures or through direct connections or just by reading that information. I felt like my bank of resources and people just exponentially expanded because of I prior to the program had hit a wall with what I could self-teach and self-find, and so having those connections facilitated for me was very, very, very beneficial.
Yeah, and Christine, you mentioned something about how your capstone project of creating this cafe for those with disabilities that may be translated also into the work that you're doing now. Do you both feel that the capstone project, or like the culmination of the things that you learned, helped to lead you to the current position that you have?
That's a really interesting question. I think in a lot of ways, sometimes it's not specifically the project, it's the activities that go into it that build our skills and builds what we're supposed to be doing. JB used an awesome word, storytelling. And I think that was one of my big takeaways, is we're all storytellers. It's just, what media are we using? What methods are we using? So thank you for that word.
Yeah.
It's been, 9 months since my capstone completed? And Zero Foodprint keeps me very, very busy. And a big thing that I learned post-graduation was just how much groundwork and time it's going to take to implement some of these things that I've been excited about. So that capstone will hopefully come to fruition into the world in the near future, but there's a few more things that have to happen first.
Good on you, good on you. And I have to say, as a faculty member, I have learned so much from the students that I have taught. They are teaching me every single day, asking those questions. I learned so much from you about foraging. You inspired me to go into the forest near me and get nettles and make nettle tea and nettle pesto. So that was you. And I have seen students really take what they're passionate about. I want to just mention a couple of capstone projects that people are working on right now because they're so fascinating. There's someone who's working on creating an app connecting restaurant chefs with local farmers in Colorado, someone creating a playbook on how restaurant chefs can reduce their food waste, someone working on a case study at a food bank in Pennsylvania, working to increase their fresh food input, or getting more fresh food from 30% to 70%. Until all of these can translate into future opportunities for them. And no matter what, they're beginning to understand this bigger picture of the food system, and watching them do that has been truly extraordinary. Last question for you all. We have some potential prospective students, those who are interested in considering these programs. We have some fabulous graduate students out there right now who are amazing. Hello, everybody. They're fabulous. These are the people you want to be talking to. If they just raise their hand, find these graduate students and talk to them, because they are the future. They are creating magic right now just by beginning to entertain the thoughts about how they want to transform this food system. So make sure you take a moment to reach out, have a conversation with them. For those who are in the audience, and then for those who are just interested in what this program is like, what is maybe a piece of advice you might give to folks who are considering the program, folks who are in the program? What's something for them to take away today?
If this resonates with you, there's a reason. If you are interested in not only pursuing or building your career in the food space, but expanding the way that you're thinking about food, I think there's a lot to be gained from even just getting more information, talking to the current students who are here, and hearing about their experiences. I'm a firm believer that things don't happen coincidentally. So if this is something that you're like, wow, that sounds really interesting. I'm missing that bigger thinking in my life, or I'm missing connecting with people who are going to challenge me, I would definitely see what else could be out there for you.
Yeah, I guess my thoughts are more directed at maybe people that are already in the program, but I think it could apply to anyone in the audience. When I went in, I was kind of picturing climate change as this one big problem, and so finding the one big solution felt very messy and confusing and difficult and challenging. And as we were able to break things down and learn more, you can start to see how many hundreds of micro problems there are, which can feel daunting for a second, until you realize then that instead of trying to find this one big giant solution, you just need to find that one micro solution that gets you out of bed every day, that keeps you in action, that inspires you. Even if it's not the most important one in your head, the one that will get you out of bed in the morning is the one that will end up having the most impact.
Strongly concur with that. Is there anything that you, looking back now, might do differently if you could start over again, or if you could talk to yourself in 2020? Give yourself a little text message from 2022. What might you advise?
Get more sleep. It's 3 a.m., go to bed. Stop doing your homework, it'll be there in the morning. I was working a full-time executive chef job during this time, so my team knew to leave me alone when I made a beeline for the espresso machine in the morning. But my advice would be to enjoy it. Enjoy the ride. It's not always just about the destination, it's about the steps you take along the way. Don't, rush through everything like, okay, I've completed the assignments for the week. I can take a bit of a breather, but enjoy what you're doing.
Also do it sooner than Monday night. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I was up till 3 a.m. getting things done. And that made my life a lot worse for it. So, start early. Who procrastinates? Procrastination sucks, right? No one likes that.
And I would say also give feedback, right? We are here as faculty members and the administration. We want to make this program better, right? And so we don't want people being up at 3 o'clock in the morning. We want to set you all up for success. So having that feedback is a really key part of evolving the program and making it the best program it can be to produce the best food and nutrition and food systems professionals that we possibly can. So thank you both so much for your time today. Let's give them a round of applause for the work they've accomplished.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mary and JB and Christine. It's really excellent to hear stories about how the CIA is preparing future leaders and how they're integrating their knowledge into making decisions that are changing the industry from their current positions. So we have up next a thought-provoking session led by Sarah Schwartz, and who will be joined by Scott Uline. Sarah Schwartz is the strategy and industry lead for CPG and restaurants at Google, where she focuses on connecting consumer behavior to industry trends. Sarah has a rich background in marketing for organizations like the Food Network and the Cooking Channel, among other organizations. Sarah will give a brief presentation and then welcome Scott Uline to the stage for a conversation on culinary and business strategies addressing the demands of a new food culture. Scott Uline is the VP of Culinary Excellence and Innovation at Panera Bread, leading the culinary team and menu innovation. With more than 3 decades in the restaurant industry, Scott Uline has been the VP of Culinary at Papa John's, Mod Pizza, and Sonic. He was also the VP of Food and Beverage at Canyon Ranch Resorts and corporate chef at ILX Resorts. He is the co-chair of our Healthy Menus R&D Collaborative, which is one of our CIA collaboratives, and he's also a CIA grad. So Sarah will welcome Scott after her presentation. Please join me in welcoming Sarah to the stage.
Thank you, Abby. Good morning, everyone. How are you doing today? I'm super excited to chat with all of you and with Scott and share a little bit about what I've been looking at. As Abby mentioned, I lead strategy and insights for our food, beverage, and restaurant advertising division at Google. And so what that means is that I'm really looking into both the consumer behavior and the industry dynamic to form a point of view, and as we just heard a lot about, a story, to be able to tell and communicate with consumers how we can connect with them. And before I get started, I want to tell a little story myself. I'm going to make sure that this clicker is working. That's about me. Here we go. Here's my story. Okay, so this is a picture of me almost 8 years ago on my honeymoon in New Zealand. And yes, I am bungee jumping, and no, I'm not crazy. But what you don't see in this picture is that about 15 minutes before this picture was taken, I was on a bus to go support my husband bungee jumping, and I had a red X on my hand, which meant I am not bungee jumping, because I said that I would never bungee jump. And so right before my husband was about to go, he said, "Are you sure you don't want to come with me? This is an opportunity for us to do something innovative and new and fun, and we can go together. It's tandem." So I thought to myself, well, if he's going to go down, then I'm going down with him. And then I thought, okay, well, what if I stop leading with a sense of fear and I start leading with a sense of excitement and be a little bit more open to the idea of thinking about things differently, or like we heard yesterday, being a little bit more courageous and leaning into something fun and new. And I did it, and it was awesome. I would not do it again, but but I really had a great time in the moment, and I lived to tell the tale. Why am I telling you this story? Because for the first little bit of this discussion, I want us all to take a moment to think about flipping how we think about food on its head. And as I share with you a couple of trends that we're looking at in this space, which are here, I want you to go jump off the proverbial ledge with me. And so the first thing that comes to mind when you think about some of these trends, which probably many of you are looking at too, don't think about that thing. Think about the next thing, or think about the thing you were scared to think about because it maybe is hard or scary or something you said you'd never do. You've had a red X on your hand. And so I want us to have a little bit of courage as we think about some of these trends and as we hear from Scott, because I think there's a great opportunity to have so many leaders in this room to be able to make change, because change does come with thinking a little bit differently, or upside down, if you will. So let's dive in. Let's talk about snacking first. Snacking is having an incredible moment. This is looking at search behavior over time. We look at Google search as a proxy for consumer interest. And what this is looking at here is snacking as a topic and interest over time. And you can see it's at an all-time high. What I think is really interesting is two things. One is that the #1 search with the word snack in it this year to date is healthy snack. So that presents a great opportunity, right, for a lot of the things that we've been talking about, and for all of us to consider how we're positioning our offerings in the vein of what consumers are looking for. And then the second thing, which is not on this slide, but I will mention, is that 1 in 3 consumers in America are replacing at least, but definitely, 1 meal a day with a snack. So again, as we think about managing diets and managing opportunities for our offerings, how are we thinking about snacking? And also, this plays into the restaurant industry really specifically here. This is a look at snacking during different day parts in quick serve restaurants. What you can see here is a look at generational behavior across different times of day. So if you look at the blue line, I'm blocking it a little bit. If you look at the blue line, this is the general population, and then if you look kind of left to right, you're looking at younger to older generations. And so you can see kind of the orange, which is Gen Z, and the yellow, which is millennial, are really driving a lot of that shift towards snacking, which I think is indicative of a lot of the lifestyle behaviors that they have in terms of having on-the-go lifestyles, really demanding quick and easy and convenient offerings. And so from a snacking perspective, I would challenge all of us to flip on our head how we think about snacking. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean make a product that's a snack, but it could be going from defined offerings for defined times of day to being expansive in how we think about snacking. Can it be with a snack? Can it be in a snack? Can it be on a snack? How can we really connect with where consumers are to meet that moment of snackification and be a little bit more versatile in our offerings? The next trend I'll talk about is a topic around nutrition and health, specifically wanting to provide a little bit more. Obviously, we talk about this over the past day and throughout today and overall nutrition and health, but we all know that protein is having a moment, a big moment. But I think what's really interesting here is how we're looking at it in the context of some other big moments. So if you look at this chart, this is looking at interest in keto, which 5 years ago, when the blue line was really leading the way, there was major interest in the keto diet. And then if you look at the yellow line, which is protein, you can see that that's now far and away the most interesting piece that people are searching for. And then in red, it kind of creeps up, is Ozempic. And so how can we see the dynamic of some of these different topics playing out in what consumers are interested in learning about. And how can we meet them where they are? I kind of think that this is indicative of interest in nutrition and health shifting from what can we take out of our diet to what can we put into our diet. In other words, I kind of talk about this as like substance over style, or like how can we think about function over like fad diets. Some of the terms here that you see at the bottom are leading terms around health and wellness that we're seeing consumers interested in, whether it be anti-inflammatory or fiber-rich, functional, obviously protein. And I think it provides a really good opportunity for us to just reposition or storytell how we're connecting what we offer and what our benefits are, so that people can really look at what that can mean for them and their health and help them really make decisions that are valuable. And speaking of value, this is a chart that looks at price, and so the value of food, if you will. Over the past 5 years, searches for food prices are at all-time highs from a 5-year perspective. And don't worry, all is not lost. I know that there's the reality that we are in a thin margins business, and there's often times that we can't just eat the costs and so meet consumers where they are to continue to drive price down because they're really price sensitive. So we've been doing a lot of research to understand, like, what does value actually mean, and how do consumers make decisions, and what factors drive the decisions that they're making and the behaviors that they're engaging in. And so when we did this research, we categorized a bunch of different topics in 3 different areas. One was functionality, so function, emotion, and then the third was financial. And what we found was that it was a balance between emotional and functional factors that really informed the final decision, which I think is really poignant because you don't see financial up here. So while there is price sensitivity, there's an opportunity for us to really intentionally communicate our value, and I would provoke us all, as we think about flipping this idea of value on its head, to think about moving from price to moving towards value, and are we worth it? What is worth more for my offering? Why am I worth paying more for, et cetera? And how can we really be intentional about leaning into our value proposition and doing some storytelling to meet consumers with what matters to them? So that's a little bit of a flavor of what I've been looking at and what we've been sharing with a lot of our food, beverage, and restaurant partners at Google. I now want to kind of shift the conversation to somebody who has a great experience in a wide array of different value propositions and has a really good sense of how several of these trends manifest in the culinary space. So Abby already mentioned Scott's background, but if you could all join me in welcoming Scott Uline. Hi, Scott. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So let's dive in.
All right.
We
Fire away.
fire away. I feel like what's so interesting about your background is that you've seen trends over your career and over the different industries that you've worked in, but also in varying altitudes. And so as we talk about value, I'm curious, either now or in past experiences, how you really think about the dynamic between price sensitivity and providing value when you're thinking about your offerings.
Yeah, I mean, we talked at Sonic extensively around what you get over what you pay. I mean, we were a QSR that was sort of a higher, kind of a higher price point.
Yep.
So, delivering value is a little bit different. And obviously at Panera, we deliver value at a different level as well. I mean, we're at a different price point there. I think pizza was very undifferentiated, so value is very hard to deliver. It's very hard to explain why your pizza is different than somebody else's pizza when one is, $3 or $4 more than another. So in each of these segments, and obviously at Kenya Ranch, value is a completely different thing. That's really experiential. So I think value continues to change. It will always change. And it's interesting to see that there's data now that backs up that says it's really about what are you delivering? What are you delivering to that individual customer and consumer more than, or at least equally as much as, how much is that consumer paying for it? Because I don't know that I believe all of that, that it's purely that. There's a segment, we're all in the industry, we understand there's a segment of people that will pay and there's a segment that won't pay. And, their willingness to pay and their definition of value is different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think certainly there are criteria and conditions that each person has for how they inform decisions. And, that's, I think, also a really good point, because that might not be representative for everyone. Obviously, that is general. But then, to your point, then, how do you think about individualizing value propositions, especially in the current work?
And it's interesting to think as we do R&D around products, we have data that says our consumer wants more protein, and there's this thing, it doesn't matter, you could put a pound of protein on a sandwich and they're still going to want more meat or more protein, right? So it's the thought process of how you do the R&D and how you're delivering that value, knowing that a consumer wants more for their money, and usually, for better or for worse, they're defining it as, I want more meat on my sandwich, which sort of begs a conversation around how do you deliver that value in a plant-based product, which, we're working on as well, and how do you deliver the protein, and so there's all these other things that come along with it. So I don't know that, everybody, we all know in this room that we're not going to be able to put just more and more and more protein. First of all, that's not going to satisfy the consumer because they're just going to want more and more and more.
Yeah.
And we just can't do that fiscally, financially, and nor does it make sense to do that from a sustainability standpoint either. So
Exactly.
it's very interesting because the protein thing, I don't know that we've cracked the code on it yet, at Panera, and I don't know that we've really cracked the code as an industry on how do we deliver. Americans are obsessed with protein. How do we deliver? And generally, it's animal protein. How do we deliver less of that, still delivering the protein that the consumer wants in a value-based proposition at a good price point that's profitable for us?
Just a few things to
Right,
think about.
right.
Like, this is, we're solving a lot here. But I think it's an important point to go down when you think about protein. And similarly, you think about, like, how much is too much, and where do we then pivot to plant-based offerings? How do you currently toggle between, okay, there's protein, so we can meet you with what you're asking for, with this is a plant-based option, this is a vegetarian option, and it also has protein, and it complements the protein that you have?
Yeah, I think I don't know. I don't know the answer. We talk about this extensively at Healthy Menus Collaborative. As we develop, for example, a true plant-based offering, even at Panera, are you delivering that protein through cheese? Are you delivering that protein? And I guess it depends on your brand, and it depends. There's plenty of brands that are sitting out here that can probably, do a meat analog or can do something that, a soy-based protein option that may or may not be right for each, for my brand. And so we look at plant-based in maybe a slightly different way. And then the question really becomes, how do you deliver the protein expectations to that consumer? And then, the other piece of the puzzle is too, whether it's GLP-1 or not, snacking is a big thing. And so the GLP consumer is eating less or eating smaller portions. But guess what? A snack is a less or smaller portion too. And yet there's still the expectation you're going to deliver some type of nutrition, value, protein, and whatever it may be. So, I don't know that I have the answer. I can say that, we're working on it and we're trying to crack the code. It may not always be the perfect answer, because the answer might be, well, we're going to have to put cheese on that, or, well, we're going to have to do some of these things that may or may not make sense from in a bigger picture. But you do have to deliver everything, or you'll deliver nothing to the consumer.
Well, what I love about that, and hopefully this resonates with a lot of you, is that we don't have to have the perfect answer. And yesterday there was a comment made about progress over perfection, and or finding those incremental moments to take an opportunity to lean further towards something than not at all. And so I appreciate that that's what you're doing, and also acknowledging in a room full of others who might be like, well, I can't get it perfect, that it's okay to put the cheese on it, or it's okay to think about things in a little bit of a different way, as long as you're leaning into it a little bit. Because I do think from a consumer perspective, they'll notice that, like, you don't have to get everything right, But if you can get things that feel a little bit closer to what their expectations are, they'll feel heard.
No, I think that's exactly right. I think it's well said. It will take a series of steps to get to the perfect place, and we may never get to the perfect place. I mean, the great news is I see a lot of non-com people out here, and you all are at kind of the bleeding edge of perfection, and that's a captive audience, and a bit of a different proposition than maybe those of us that are out sort of in the commercial world. But the great news is that you're doing the work for us. That consumer ultimately will land in my dining room or at my drive-through or, through DoorDash to me, and they'll have an expectation that may be different. A new generation may have an expectation that's different around how you deliver the protein, how you deliver these things, and that may be perfection. So although we define it as imperfection now, that may ultimately to another generation be perfection.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things I think about is that this is like en vogue right now. Like this is of the moment, but obviously there are trends and there are fads. Like we look at fads that come and go and trends that kind of sustain. Knowing the development cycle that, can sometimes take to be able to put these things out, how do you balance the trends and leaning into them to be able to deliver on what consumers want while also recognizing that R&D is not an overnight thing?
Yeah, it's not an overnight thing, that's right. I mean, I guess I would say a very tactical example would be, I'm not sure how many of us out there are innovating around non-seed oil offerings. Will this non-seed oil movement continue past the current administration? First of all, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. I acknowledge that, and I'm not advocating for non-seed oils. I'm saying that whether we want to acknowledge it or not, the elephant in the room is it's out there, and our consumers are certainly asking me about it and asking us about it. I don't know that it makes sense. I mean, I guess I would say if I were developing a product, I would look at both seed and non-seed, acknowledging that if it's going to be an 18-month development process, by the time 18 months hits, I'll have more clarity around whether I need to go down the non-seed oil or not. So there is data, and then there is sort of a sense, like, is this a trend? Is it something I'm really going to have to address? I don't think protein is going away. I don't think plant-based is going away. I'm not sure about seed oil. I mean, I'd like to think that that's going to calm down. I mean, we have a lot of smart people in the room that can get the message out there that this is not a thing, Right. I mean, because to undo our system of sort of the seed oils that are out there will have health consequences and will have, of course, supply chain consequences. So I think those are probably two pretty good examples of something I'm likely to go after, plant-based, protein, those things, and I'm not likely to go after, or I'm less likely, or I'm going to do a slower roll, which is probably something around seed oils. Although, I mean, it's nipping at our heels, right? I mean, it's out there.
Yeah. And what I think is a good distinction is the right side of what you mentioned, or at least right on my right,
your right.
left, is that when we think about plant-based and protein, those are consumer-driven trends. And then when we think about seed oils, it's like a legislative-driven trend, which has informed consumer perception. But by the way, now it's taken as gospel. And I think it's really wise of you to think about, well, I can't ignore it, so I'm going to experiment around it. And then something that we spoke about is the importance of communicating that. Like, hey, we're going to take a look at this, even if we don't get all the way there. Or, hey, we can use seed oils, and here's why, so that even as you're exploring it as consumers, have it as top of mind.
Yeah, there has to be a story. And I'll bet you your search incidents, seed oil is probably this and then this, Yes. And my guess is it'll level off and it'll probably go back down.
Yeah,
but a year from now, it'll be interesting to see, what does that search trend line look like on seed oils? Because I will bet you there's nothing, and then there's this massive thing. It'll be interesting to see how quickly it peaks and how quickly it goes down. And I mean, I know a bunch of you out there are in the K-12 realm or in colleges and institutions, and I had the good fortune to sit on some of these MAHA, NRA meetings and presentations through the National Restaurant Association. And it looks like, unfortunately, you all are going to be on the front lines, especially those of you that are feeding kids. So you're the ones that are going to have to address this first, which is a bummer for you. Maybe better for me, but you may have to, because I get the feeling that a lot of these initiatives will come up through kids, the kids programs. At least that's sort of what the readout is, and so I'll be watching those of you that are in that sector to see, where are we going and what do we really have to go after? And there's always those other things that are swimming, the other sharks swimming close to our body, like salt, like sugar, and the things that at Healthy Menus Collaborative are sort of the evergreen topics, and they're not going away either. But the difference, I think, is from what I'm hearing, and you all have better information than I do, this is all going to come up through kids, right? It's kids programs, and so. And that means we have a whole generation of kids that are going to come up potentially without these things. And the expectations are, in the long run, I've got to address those things too.
Yeah, and what I love about what you're saying is not that it's everybody here's responsibility, but I think the importance of something we spoke about yesterday is language, right? Because kids might not perceive the conversation around seed oils as important to them, but if we can reframe or use the right language or common language that's understandable to them, around seed oils, around sugar or fat or protein or plant-based. I think, yesterday there was an example shared around like, how do we move from just, meat-free one day to being like inclusive once you really get it into the world. And so language is definitely an important piece. I think consumers outside of this room don't necessarily speak the same language that we all do. So even in the work that you're doing or in past examples, how are you intentional with the language that you're communicating as the benefit or the value of beyond protein? Because that's kind of maybe an easier one.
Yeah, sure. I think when there's a marketing campaign, and I'm going to advocate for the CIA. The CIA needs a culinary marketing degree. I'm just putting it out there because those of you that have a deep background in culinary that could also market, you're going to crack the code on this. But generally, I think the most successful campaigns are revolved around, here's our advertising campaign, here's our public relations campaign. So the public relations campaign can often tell the sustainability, better for you protein story, which any brand, even kind of a better for you brand like Panera, we likely wouldn't be able to tell, especially in 15-second videos that show up on YouTube, or, so you need somebody to tell the story, and I think that's generally the public relations story. In the mass media advertising that shows up on social media or YouTube or where it shows up, that revolves around the craveability, that revolves around the eating experience, that revolves around the emotional connection, and I think those tend to be the most successful products, and telling the story maybe in two different ways. So maybe you're not telling that to the kid, but you're telling that to the parent, who's then ultimately taking sound bites from the PR story probably and telling it to their kid. So I think those generally tend to be, at least in my career, those have tended to be sort of the more successful limited time offers or campaigns.
What's interesting, I love that, because what's interesting about kind of those two pathways is that we're starting to see them converge when it comes to influencer and creator-based marketing. Like, all of a sudden, you can have that PR message woven in through a mass media vehicle through someone who is hopefully an expert. That the jury's still out on that.
It doesn't matter if they're an expert, as long as they're telling the story, right? No, I think that's a really good point. Maybe in this world of influencers is where you're starting to see the convergence of these two, and they can more successfully weave those two stories together. And the reality is, even if your formal campaign is here and your formal public relations campaign is here, they'll be the ones to pick it up, and kind of merge the two, which is good.
Yeah, and to that point, we're seeing a lot of that happen with our big brands as well, and I know Panera's definitely leaning in. I think what you said about coming at the parents versus coming at the kids, this is another way, again, of potentially coming at both. We've seen interesting work that Domino's, for example, has done with like families of creators or influencers, so that they really can meet the whole spectrum of people who are interested and lean into everybody's different value propositions, if you will.
Yeah, no, I think that's very smart. I think it's very smart.
Okay, let's see. I know we just have a couple of minutes left, so I want to make sure we land on a couple more questions. Let's talk a little bit about let's stay on the legislation aspect here and talk a little bit about how you think about the day-to-day changes that are happening and how you're reacting to or preparing to respond, or how you set your team up to not kind of go into fire drill mode, but thoughtfully respond to these changes that are coming fast and
Yeah, that's a
furious.
good question. I think you do it category by category. So we probably approach beverage differently than we do other categories. You had a lot of good information up there. I'm going to steal that slide at some point, around beverage, around anti-inflammatory, around these other functional beverages. And so, again, I guess it somewhat comes down to what do you think is a trend and what do you think is really sort of, going to take hold. I guess to hedge your bets, you go and you do innovation in two lanes. It's like, all right, well, I'm going to innovate around this with seed oil. I'm going to innovate around it without. I'll pick on seed oil again just because it seems to be sort of the easiest thing the easiest example to take. So I don't think the product I'm working on today that'll launch even 6 months from now, I don't think it'll matter whether it has seed oil in it or not, because the whole seed oil thing, what we're going to land on is likely that we have to identify items with seed oil. And I will tell you, everybody in this room, we will have whatever asterisk we need next to our item on every single item, because I use extra virgin olive oil on my focaccia, but there's a small amount of a functional canola oil in there. It's in there for functionality. It's not in there for any other reason. I'm gonna have to identify that, right? Yeah. So we're all gonna have to do this. So it's going to become just background white noise, So I think but I'll make sure that I'm, innovating against this. But I think I'm not likely to launch it, I guess is what I would say. And then you sort of have hey, I think this is for real, and we need to go after something like a functional beverage.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, some closing thoughts as we're coming up on time. So you talked about the importance of innovation and really leaning in. Obviously, we have folks and leaders from different parts of the industry. When you think on the culinary side and you think on the business side, what are kind of some closing thoughts that we could share with the group about how they think about innovation?
Yeah, think about both. Don't think about one or the other. You have to think about both. The economics are real. So much work around plant forward over the last 13 years of menus have changed. Guess what? There's a real economic benefit to plant forward now. Maybe there was this murky time where, beef is just as expensive as mushrooms or what, and I've lived through that murky time. It's not the case anymore. So, I think there's an economic incentive to look at plant forward that maybe we didn't necessarily have before. And I think, so now's the time. But you really do, I think you really do have to look at both. You look at the culinary side, or all three, the culinary, the marketing, and then kind of the fiscal side. And we do innovation against all three of those things. I don't do anything in, one silo or another, because one of those things could derail the whole product.
Yeah, I love that. We think about that too. So maybe if I can just leave the group with wrapping up what I've heard from you, because I think you've shared some really salient points. It's the opportunity to think about the connectivity between marketing, business, and culinary, and not leaving one out. So there's definitely an opportunity for cross-collaboration across many of the groups that we might not be sitting in, but the opportunity to really help one another catapult forward. The opportunity for category-based thinking, because there is ways that we could be considering different angles of an industry or an offering differently. And then also it starts with the kids, so you in K through 12, get ready. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you very much.
Likewise.
So we're going to dig even further into culinary and business strategies in our next session, which is a very special fireside chat session between CIA President Michael Bacher and CIA Leadership Award winner and CIA grad Pedro Miguel Schiaffino. They will be discussing this topic that Michael brought up yesterday on vital gastronomy in practice, and how changing menus in support of communities and local biodiversity can also lead to greater consumer acceptance of healthy, sustainable, and delicious food experiences. As many of you know, Michael Bacher is the 6th president of the CIA, bringing more than 3 decades of global leadership and expertise in food, hospitality, and services industry, previously leading Google's Food at Work program and served a variety of key roles at Starwood Hotels and Resorts. Pedro Miguel Schiaffino is a renowned Peruvian chef, conservationist, researcher, known for pioneering Amazonian cuisine and regional biodiversity. He's the founder of Malabar and Amaz and received the Icon Award from the World's 50 Best Restaurants in 2019 for his contributions to the culinary world. He currently leads Despensa Amazonica, a nonprofit promoting Amazonian ingredients and sustainability with a deep focus on sustainable seafood. Please join me in welcoming Michael and Pedro to the stage.
Thank you, Abby.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have many perks in my job, and one of them is to meet with fabulous chefs, especially when they're graduates from the CIA. Good morning, Pedro.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very grateful to be here.
It is wonderful to have you back over here.
Thank you.
Let's dig into it. Gastronomy or culinary? What term resonates more with you?
Well, I think when we talk about gastronomy, I love your presentation yesterday, and I totally agree with vital gastronomy. I think it's the whole picture, right? It's it involves more of your daily life or what surrounds you, what goes around you, So it's not only if you talk about culinary, maybe you talk about product techniques, and gastronomy is more about things that moves you and that connects you with your emotions, right? So I don't know. Gastronomy is culture, is territory, is the people around you.
It's all of us.
It's all of us.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bigger picture.
I would agree. So tell me a little bit about your journey. So you left us over here in 1997.
Yes.
What happened then?
It's been a long time, no? It's been a long journey. Been enjoying every part of it. I'm really happy of all the things that I've done. Really, looking back, I think I don't regret anything that I've done. I opened restaurants, I closed restaurants. What I've done with the Amazon cuisine, it's been very challenging and difficult. But looking back, I think it really, make a difference from when I begin where we are right now. So when I started, 2002, things were different. We didn't have technology that we have today. We didn't have social media. So you needed to travel to really get in touch with the producers, to get in touch with your cuisine, to get more knowledge and get information. It was more difficult for us in our time than it is today. I think social media, it's important, and it has a big role today. But back then, the only way to really build your identity and build your cuisine and understand what's going on, you had to get out of the kitchen to do that.
Yeah, but maybe for the audience over here, I think you started as what I would call maybe a more traditional chef. You operated restaurants, but then something happened during your career where you became way more focused on actually the further build-out of the Amazonian cuisine. So tell us a little bit about how that happens. How did you actually evolve from being very focused on running a restaurant to really becoming focused on the cuisine of the country that you love so much?
Well, something that drives me, that really, it's something that I was born with, is curiosity. And I think everybody has curiosity, no? In some way, when you're a kid, you're very curious. And this is something that you shouldn't lose. I think curiosity, for me, is a big part of my identity and also what drives my work. So when I arrived from Europe, I wanted to really understand my cuisine and know my products. So the only way to do that was traveling, and the only way to do that was going out of the kitchen. And what happened there is that I came across with some ingredients that were absolutely unknown for me. And that changed everything. I said, okay, I have to understand more, I have to learn more, I have to travel more. So I started traveling, and for the first time, I went to the Amazon in 2003. And you know what? I did several things that helped me to understand more what I'm doing now. But these ideas that came and comes, like, I don't know, I start opening doors, and these things that I did led me to other things. But for example, before opening in 2004 my restaurant, I went with a friend that is biologist, and we said, okay, let's go to the Amazon. I think we have a lot of diversity in those rivers. There's a lot of fish. We like fishing. I love fishing. I love spear diving. So that's another passion that I have, the ocean. But I said, okay, let's move there, or let's travel there, and let's see what's happening. And we found out that was a huge diversity. So we start bringing fish from the Amazon, 2003. This was, at that time, like unimaginable. Fresh fish, and sell it to the restaurants. So I knocked every single restaurant in Peru at that time. I remember Gaston Acurio knocking Gaston Acurio's door and bringing the fresh fish from the Amazon, and he was saying, nah, that's not going to work. You know, and then the other chef, Rafael Osterling, and other chefs that were leading the culinary scene in that moment in Peru, and they were telling me, no, you're crazy, no? But then I said, okay, if these guys are not going to buy me this fish, I'm going to knock, a supermarket or a deli shop. So I knocked that, and they say, okay, yeah, we can buy that. So, and we start selling for the season fresh fish. And that helped me to travel and to get to know more the Amazon. And that's how I started. So then I caught the attention of an entrepreneur that was building a cruise ships in the Amazon. Okay, he was a local guy. I said, you are the only one that works with Amazonian cuisine. Please, could you come and work with me? I already had my restaurant, Malabar, and I was also putting Amazonian cuisine at that time in my restaurant. So that, when I say you open doors and one thing leads you to others, is the things that you need to do. And curiosity is what drives me to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that knowledge is the base of everything. What I realized that what I was looking for, I was looking for knowledge. And this is something that every single chef or entrepreneur needs to do, to have a deep knowledge of your surrounding, of your products, of what's going on in your community, and how to help to make that better.
Yeah, but I hear you articulate loud and clear your curiosity and your just drive to get more knowledge. But I think there's a distinction between that and ultimately knocking on other restaurants, chefs' doors, and to say, do you want to buy my fish? So how did that work from ultimately your intellectual curiosity to getting more involved in a very different cuisine type and ultimately becoming the chef agent that you became?
I don't know. I always try to impact in my community, even though it sounds a cliche and now we are talking about this, but this was always in my mind. What can I do to make my culinary scene better? How can I level that standard, quality standard in my cuisine and in my gastronomy, in Peruvian gastronomy? This is something that a group of us start thinking about 20 years ago or 25 years ago, and start also like sharing, you know. I think, and this is something that I think we are responsible for it. We as a country, I don't know how to say it, as a culinary team, but Peruvian chefs are responsible of teaching other chefs that we need to share everything. Actually, we realized at that time, 2007, 2006, when we came together and started working together, that if we don't share everything, we are not going to grow as a cuisine or as a group.
Yeah.
No? And that's a key point, because sometimes we are afraid of telling other what's your secret. And actually, there are no secrets, especially nowadays with social media and all the information that you have. But there are no secrets. So the key here is to share and to, give all that you know.
To pay it forward.
Yeah, this is important, and very, very important. So, I mean, I think that was a turning point for Peruvian cuisine, when we start sharing everything.
So if you look back to, when you started with all of that, you had this clear drive for ultimately sharing and actually paying it forward. Did you have a clear view at that time of what success was going to be for you in that type of work?
Not really. I know. If you have a restaurant, in order to do other things, you need success. You need to make that restaurant works. If I want to travel around my country and pay for the expenses, that restaurant needs to work, because the money needs to show from somewhere. And the restaurants were paying all this. I had also the great opportunity to work after this cruise ship that I told you, the local one. An entrepreneur from Italy came, and he also did a cruise ship. It's called Aqua Expeditions. So I've been working with Aqua Expedition for the last 20 years. And they helped me a lot to, for the expenses of all these trips and all these projects that I did. So I'm also very grateful about that, but this costs you also money, and you need to do that. And in order to do that, your restaurant needs to be successful. If not, you're not going to be able. It costs a lot. Also, being absent of your kitchen, you need to build a good team. You need to be a good leader, and you need to, be surrounded by good professionals. This is very important. Sometimes we don't understand all the things that are around when you are outside of your kitchen.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I also want to add something that is very important, is that it's not the same when we talk about cuisine in other parts of the world, in any part of the world. The realities are different. The needs and the gaps that every country and community have, they're different. So when I go out of the kitchen, it's not the same than if a chef from America goes out of the kitchen or in Europe goes out of the kitchen. It's different. We have different needs. So it's not fair to also compare this. That's what I always say. You need to understand my reality to understand what I'm doing. No?
Yeah. So then very specifically for you and what you're doing today, so what are the things that you're really focused on driving at? So what is it that is really keeping you busy these days, besides ultimately the restaurant, but from the promoting of either the cuisine or affecting change in another area?
There's a lot of things that motivate me and drives me, but yeah, keeping it's also cliche, but you say in this business or when you're in gastronomy, you never stop learning. So I really took serious that I want to keep learning, but learning to try, at least I try it every day, to share that knowledge. To share that knowledge with others. That's what really drives me. If I learn something, I want to tell my colleagues, and usually I do immediately what I learn. You know, I found this, I learned this technique, I learned this about, you know, all the things that usually we do. And I think that sharing that I said before, it's very important, and that's what keeps me. But I think knowledge. I think getting more knowledge about my country and my cuisine and my culture.
Yeah, obviously there's so much to do for you. So I'm just going back to when you started, you mentioned that there was not social media in the way we have it as of today. And I would say it's probably a blessing and a curse, because I think you can only really learn a culture by being in it. And now you have the blessing that you can ultimately go online and you can learn about anything all over the world, but it's still very different from being in it. So if you look back to how you started and where you're at as of today, how do you look at then versus now?
So nowadays, through social media, you can find out what every chef is doing. Before that, the only way to communicate was your restaurant. Mm-hmm. No? It was the dish, the cuisine that you were doing. This has totally changed right now. The restaurant is not the only vehicle to communicate. Now, through social media, you communicate what you're doing. And this has, I mean, social media, as you said, it has negative impacts, but also have very positive impacts. So nowadays, you can find out what is going on in other countries with other realities, and you can look at that as a mirror. You can say, okay, I like what he's doing, what these people is doing. I will do the same in my country. So this is something that we should always do, no? Not to compare it, but to see what are the things that connects us, not the differences. What connects us? And try to put that into your reality. I don't know if I explain myself.
Yeah.
It's like, if I see that this is working, it has a positive impact for them, for the chef or these cooks, why don't we do the same? And don't be afraid of doing that. It's like you have to be humble enough to say, okay, I need to learn. These guys are doing nice things. They're doing good. Why don't calling them and finding out what's going on? So that's what social media is doing right now.
Yeah.
It's connecting more and has some more impact. Before, the only way to connect or to impact was through your restaurant and your cuisine.
So if I can build upon that, so it feels to me that, in the quote-unquote good old days, as a chef, you were in the restaurant, you were making it magically work, and that was basically your base. But what I hear you do today is that in addition to running an amazing restaurant, you need to have a very clear social media presence. And then what you're doing as well, you continue to both represent the industry and you continue to explore. How do you think about balancing that?
I was going to say that. You need to balance that. You need to balance. Sometimes you put too much attention to how people see you and to show what you're doing. But actually what I think and what I do, and I've always done this way, is that I like working first, having the results and then communicating. It's like a silence job, no? I like to work in silence. I like to do things and then communicate them. Because of the immediately thing about social media, people when see something or do something, immediately communicate. No, I don't like that. Actually, I'm not good communicating through media. I'm good communicating with the communities and the people that are around me, but through media, not so well. But I see that this is also, you have a responsibility in that. Because things takes time. Relationships, they take time. And this kind of work, it takes time. I've been working with local Amazonian communities for more than 15 years. And we are still in a process to understand them, for them to understand our market, our business. And this is not going to happen from one day to another. It takes a lot of time, and people don't really understand that. They want everything immediately. At least in my case, in my country, this is not immediately.
Yeah.
This is going to take a lot of time. So you have to be patient, and you have to work, and then communicate, no? And then balance. Don't pay too much attention to yourself or communicating what you've done, or for like we say in Spanish, you do it only for the picture. No, really, you have to go deep into your into your community and your gastronomy. This is something that I always tell to my colleagues: go deep into that. Don't scratch the surface.
Yeah.
No? And we, as I said, it depends on your reality. We need this. We need cooks, chefs to get involved in the whole, chain, no? No?
Yeah. Slightly different question. You have many, 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 many more years to go. But if you start to ponder your legacy, it is both what you have done already so far, but when you think about the next generation, kids that go to school over here, people are very actually, the kids that are very social media savvy, how do you think about how they will make the type of impact in a different way than you're doing today?
I think we already had what we've done had an impact. I think the last 20 years, Peruvian gastronomy has changed a lot. In a positive way, there's a lot of things to do yet, but like the culinary scene today, first of all, we start as a group to help people to fall in love and to recognize them as a culinary nation.
Yep.
No, so this is also a job that we did for many years and in many ways, and that creates a huge impact on the whole society. Now, in Peru, the whole nation feels proud about food and gastronomy, as well as in football or soccer, no? Soccer. So yeah, these are the two big things in Peru, but that we were part of that change, that big change that happened in Peru. So yeah, I have a different approach to see it, and this is what we also need to do. We need to identify what are the actors in the whole scene, and what are the positive things that each one has. I play a different role than my colleagues like Micha, Gaston, Virgilio. We all play different roles, and this is what it's important to understand. We don't have to be the same, but we have to understand each other and share.
Yeah, definitely we're better together. Maybe in the closing minutes, You're clearly an agent of change, a chef of change. What advice can you offer other chefs and culinarians in the audience and tuning in online today? Your words of wisdom.
Yeah, yeah. I never worked really thinking in making a change. That's important to understand. I think, I was not thinking I'm going to do this to make a change. I'm doing this because I need to do it. It's a sense of responsibility. You need to be responsible for what's going on. You have to take that responsibility serious, you know? And if you see something, and we've been hearing yesterday and today the things, and when you see things that are not the right way, you need to change that, you know? But nowadays it's super cliche to see an actor in
Correct.
in this scene, but you really need to work, and you need to go deep into that. That's something that I always tell my colleagues. I think that I impact a lot in my colleagues because I talk to them a lot, and they see how open I am and how I connect with them. A lot of these things and you need to connect. Emotions are very important. And this is something that I think you should add to those concepts that you brought up yesterday.
Conscious culinary leadership, emotion.
The emotion is very important. The
Yeah.
emotion is what is going to difference from the future. I mean, AI, you're not going to get the same emotion from all this technology that is coming up. So you need to connect with your emotions, and you need to share those emotions too, to connect with other people. And we are doing that from inside from the culinary scene in Peru.
Yeah.
We are connecting each other.
Yeah. Well, I love what you do. Great respect for what you've done so far. And thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for sharing your insights with us
I
today.
appreciate that. I just want to say, if you want to find out more about Despensa Amazonica, you can go in despensamazonica.org. And yeah, we're going to continue this, and I'm going to continue learning.
Thank you so much. All righty.
Thank you, Michael.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Pedro. Pedro's really a hallmark example of how chefs can be change makers, using their curiosity and taking the time to improve the livelihoods of a community of local producers and elevating a region through gastronomy. What I heard was it's important to learn from others outside of the culinary industry, to get outside of the kitchen if you're a chef, and to learn, especially in partnership with science. And so there's a great opportunity to do that here at Menus of Change as well. It's very truly inspiring. I invite you now to enjoy a refreshment and networking break downstairs. Our CIA faculty spotlight is Walter Grott, who prepared some energy bars that should take you through the morning. This will be a chance for you to stretch your legs. We'll see you back here at 10:30 for a lightning presentation with Dr. Christopher Gardner, followed by a consumer and nutrition insights session entitled Serving Up Powerful Plants. We'll see you soon.
For the health and safety of your customers, it's very important to prevent cross-contamination of gluten-free foods with those containing gluten. So why gluten-free? The gluten-free category is more than a $100 billion industry that grew 10% over the last year. Gluten-free is the third most popular health claim on menus today, and 1 out of 5 people today eat gluten-free for various reasons. As a chef, you can help these customers stay safe while still enjoying their favorite foods. Here, we'll share some tips to become a safe dining space for customers who can't eat gluten. These suggestions are based on industry best practices and are not all-encompassing or a substitute for internal research and training due diligence. To start, let's talk about preparing and cooking gluten-safe. Before you begin preparing gluten-free foods, make sure everything is clean and sanitized. Clean and sanitize all work surfaces and equipment. Wash all tools and pans, thoroughly wash your hands, and put on a new pair of gloves before prepping gluten-free foods. To prevent cross-contamination, make sure to designate tools and equipment for gluten-free foods only. Use a separate cutting board, toaster, microwave, and fryer for gluten-free foods. Use foil or parchment paper to avoid potentially contaminated areas. And lastly, designate the top rack of the oven for gluten-free foods. Serving and storing gluten-free foods separately also helps prevent cross-contamination. Serve gluten-free foods with separate knives, plates, and utensils. Change gloves before serving gluten-free foods. And store gluten-free foods in separate, clearly marked containers or reseal in its original packaging. A commonly used system in professional kitchens to ensure the safe handling of food is called HACCP. This acronym means Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points, and every professional kitchen needs to have this safety system in place. Once your operation has a gluten-safe system in place, your menu's gluten-free offerings can be full of exciting and craveable possibilities.
Now I'm going to do a vegetable kofta curry with the leftover juice peel. So it is the concept of zero wastage. So whatever which has been left over after taking the juice, the peels, it is a combination of beetroot, carrot, and other vegetables. So we will be making a kofta sort of it by adding little bit of potato to it, adding little bit of chilies to it, adding some coriander, and for a little bit of binding, we will be adding little bit of corn flour. So now we will be mixing it with properly. It is actually a very good initiative to make a zero wastage approach, repurposing the ingredients instead of throwing them out. So we need to mash up very properly. Now I will be adding a little bit of pepper powder to it. See, now I can make a kofta sort of it. Now you're gonna bake this koftas instead of frying it.